Today, we're diving into a landmark Indian legal case that all comes down to one simple question with a really complex answer. What does it actually mean to be a wife? This is the story of a fight that went on for decades, and it didn't just change one woman's life, it ended up reshaping the law itself.
So, let's start with a bit of a brain teaser, one that sounds completely impossible. How can a woman go through a whole marriage ceremony, live with her husband, and then have a court turn around and tell her she isn't legally his wife? I know, it sounds like a contradiction, right? But this was the exact question at the very heart of a long and difficult legal battle.
To get our heads around this, we've got to go back to the story of one woman, Yamunabai Anantrao Adhav. Her case would eventually climb all the way to the highest court in the land.
Now, on the surface, her story seems pretty straightforward. You've got a marriage in 1974, then just a week later, she leaves because of alleged mistreatment, and by 1976, she's filing for financial support. Simple enough. But there was a single hidden fact that would turn this plea for help into a legal odyssey that would drag on for more than a decade.
And here is the twist. Anantrao Adhav already had a living, legally wedded wife named Lilabai when he married Yamunabai. This made their marriage a second marriage, which is a big no-no under India's Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. And that one fact, well, it changed absolutely everything.
So this revelation brought a huge legal question before the Supreme Court. And this wasn't just about her marriage. It was about the very definition of a word we all think we understand.
The court's job was to figure out, what does the word wife actually mean in the eyes of the law? Is it just any woman who goes through a ceremony believing it's real? Or does it have to mean a woman in a marriage that is 100% legal from day one? The stakes here were incredibly high, because this maintenance law isn't just a rule. It's supposed to be a social safety net, designed to keep women from falling into poverty. To even begin to answer that, the court first had to figure out the legal status of Yamunabai's marriage. And this all hinges on a really crucial legal distinction that sounds similar but is actually worlds apart: the difference between a void and a voidable marriage.
Okay, let's break this down. A void marriage, or as lawyers like to say, void ab initio, is a complete non-starter. From the very beginning, it's a total nullity. The law basically pretends it never ever happened. It's not that the marriage is broken, it's that it was never legally real in the first place.
And this distinction is critical. A void marriage, like when someone is already married, is invalid automatically. You don't even need a court to say so. But a voidable marriage, let's say because of fraud or something, is actually considered valid until one person goes to court and has it officially annulled. So one never legally existed, and the other existed for a while until it was undone.
And in this case, the law was crystal clear. Section 11 of the Hindu Marriage Act leaves no room for doubt. Because Anantrao's first wife, Lilabai, was still alive, his marriage to Yamunabai wasn't just flawed or breakable, it was legally void from the instant it happened.
So, with the marriage legally a nullity, as if it had never existed, how did that affect Yamunabai's claim for financial support? This is where the court had to connect the dots, and it's where things get really tough. The court's reasoning back then was incredibly strict, very literal. First, they decided that the word wife in the maintenance law could only mean a legally wedded wife, period. Then, they pointed out that while the law made special exceptions for, say, divorced women, it said absolutely nothing about women in void marriages. And finally, they rejected the idea that just because Anantrao acted like her husband, he should be legally stuck with that label. In their view, his actions couldn't just magically change what the law plainly stated.
And all of that led to this stark final decision. The court basically said that since her marriage was a complete nullity, she had never legally been a wife. And if she wasn't a wife, she wasn't entitled to maintenance under that law. Her appeal was dismissed. After all those years of fighting, Yamunabai was left with nothing.
Now, you can see the legal logic there, right? But the real-world consequence was incredibly harsh. It created this massive loophole, meaning women who were tricked into a sham marriage had no protection at all. But you know what? The story doesn't end there.
For decades after that 1988 judgment, this was the law of the land. It meant a man could lie, hide a whole other marriage, trick a woman into a fake one, and then face zero financial responsibility toward her under this law. The law, in its effort to be precise, had actually failed to protect the most innocent people.
But the law isn't static, it's supposed to evolve, and decades later, in 2014, in a case called Badshah versus Urmila Godse, the Supreme Court took another look at this exact problem. They moved away from that strict, literal interpretation and instead focused on social justice. Their new ruling was guided by a simple principle. You can't be allowed to benefit from your own fraud. If a man deceived a woman into a void marriage, he was now on the hook financially.
So what does all this mean for the law right now? After this 40-year journey, from Yamunabai's marriage to the Badshah ruling, where did we end up? Okay, so here's the key takeaway. That strict 1988 definition of wife is technically still the law. But, and this is a huge but, the Badshah case created a vital path to justice. Now, if a woman can prove she was fraudulently tricked into a void marriage, the courts can grant her maintenance. It's a really clever solution that respects the letter of the law while stopping it from being used as a weapon by wrongdoers.
This whole saga leaves us with a really profound question that our courts and our society are still grappling with today. Should a law be followed exactly as it's written, even if it leads to an unfair result? Or should it be interpreted in a way that achieves the justice it was meant to serve? The long, hard story of Yamunabai shows us there are no easy answers.